All right, ladies and gentlemen, I've got 10 of, and that means it's time to start the presentation by the Defense Innovation Unit. I'm Ray Cross of FCA International. I just want to thank everyone for being here today. If you haven't noticed today, there's a lot of people here, and it is by far the most successful West we've ever held. We're honored that you're here. We're honored to partner with USNI to put on a show like this. So thank you for your attendance. I just want to say it's a real opportunity and treat to hear DIU. I had the opportunity to hear them back at our headquarters, some other presenters recently. I think it's worth your while to learn about how they're accelerating commercial adoption within the department. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Glenn McCartan. He'll take the lead this afternoon. They're going to brief for about 30 minutes, and then we'll turn it over to Q&A from the floor. Thanks very much. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Everyone hear me okay? Great. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending today. Again, my name is Lieutenant Colonel Glenn McCartan, United States Marine Corps. I'm part of the Defense Engagement Team here within the Defense Innovation Unit, and we see this as a unique opportunity to kind of like showcase a little bit what DIU is and to help kind of demystify some of the questions we often get, and just understand some of our processes to really kind of go down and in a little bit about, what we contribute to the innovation sphere, to defense acquisition, how we help you not only as the defense partners, but how do we help our commercial engagement, especially our defense industry, engage with DoD in new and novel ways, arguably better, cheaper, faster, to move with speed and agility, which I think any industry rep here would obviously acknowledge is something that we need to do better in DoD. So we're going to go through a little bit today, here with my colleagues today, to kind of go through a little bit of overview of what DIU is, the 5 Ws, and go a little bit into our processes, which I think is really important. A lot of people don't think process is important, but actually having a streamlined process that helps you engage not only our defense partners in a better, more constructive way, but also to work with commercial industry itself, really is a great way to understand how we work together as an organization, and how we can help both serve our industry and our defense partners in this regards. So, kind of a quick overview. So we'll do a quick DIU overview, and then my colleague Jesse will go a little bit into the NSIN, a little bit on that, and we'll discuss as well NSIC. So there's 3 organizations with DIU altogether, or DIU proper, if you will, and then we'll go into a little bit on detail on each. So obviously the need to focus on commercial technology, specifically a lot of emerging technologies, are providing the asymmetric advantages that we need for our future fight. We see this in Ukraine. We see this obviously what's growing in the Pacific, obviously with our pacing threats, and the need to obviously get after this technology in a much quicker, more agile way. DoD needs to be a fast follower to a lot of this technology. More too often we see this in DoD that we tend to focus on building our own exquisite technologies, using our R&D dollars. But more too often we fail to see sometimes that the commercial sector is really doing a much greater job of outpacing DoD and the ability to actually develop really great technologies that DoD can get after now. So our argument here is that, hey, DoD needs to be a fast follower of commercial technology to really learn to adapt those technologies at the speed in which they're being developed. So these are 3 core organizations that fall under the umbrella of DIU. Obviously there's core DIU itself, which was founded about 2017 by Secretary Carter. In addition to, we have 2 other organizations that some of you might be familiar with. So the National Security Innovation Network, and also National Security Innovation Capital. Each of them have a very complementary effort to what we're trying to do as an organization. I won't steal too much of Jesse's thunder on NSIN, and I'll go a little bit more into detail on NSIC in subsequent slides. So what is DIU? What is our mission? So really, if you look at it, we're a fast-moving organization. We fall under OSD R&E. So I have to say these things because people sometimes ask, are you a consortium? Are you a venture capital firm? No, we're actually a DoD entity, organization, fully appropriated by Congress, focusing on connecting partners. In this case, our service partners. It could be the various services, and to include the Fourth Estate and all of U.S. government for that matter, to help connect their problems to a commercial solution in a very rapid, streamlined way. Our focus is on accelerating technology. So this is not doing in the R&D space. So this is kind of in the vein of what we were talking about, the fast follower, which is adopting technologies that have already been proven out in the commercial sector for DoD use. So think, rather than reinvent the iPhone, take the iPhone and modify it for what you need. So try to scale that with various technologies. This is not a COT solution in the same vein of ordering something off Amazon. This is about adopting this technology that we've, through a very rigorous process, to help get them through a very quick prototyping stage and actually get them to field this to our service partners. So we're focusing on transforming that capability as well. And ultimately, really, it's about strengthening the industrial base itself. So obviously, we focus a lot on the non-traditional partners, so non-traditional companies, the smaller, dual-use technology companies that normally would never think to work with DIU. This is kind of our focus here, is how do we actually bridge that divide through a very rapid process. And my colleague, Jeremy, will go through that with you. So where's our focus? So we have 6 portfolios currently that we kind of center around. As you can see there, a lot of these are the emerging technologies that we believe that have a lot of the asymmetric advantage that we'll need in the 21st century. We have portfolio reps on top of each of them. Within that organization, we have project managers who serve as kind of our traditional points of contact. On each bookend, what we have is what we call the defense engagement side, and as well as our commercial engagement side. Jeremy and I work on the defense engagement side, where our sole focus is on working and engaging with defense partners. So to kind of focus on the defense problems of the different services and our different partners. And then on the flip side, we also have our commercial engagement team, which is really important, which they stay heavily nested with a lot of commercial industry themselves. So working with, coming to events like this, connecting with small partners to make sure that we are aware of the cutting edge technology, but also to just establish that relationship for as when new problems and new solicitations come forward, we're able to have that relationship, be able to reach out in that regards. So we do have some of our set reps here as well today, so happy to connect them in that regards. Yep, there he is, there's Ray right there. So if you'd like to connect with Ray. So what do we do? What is DIU, how do we approach this? So think of us kind of like a broker in between 2 organizations. So I think when we first stood up DIU, when DIU was first stood up, there was this idea of kind of helping 2 communities kind of engage. So within DIU, we have this robust network of individuals that kind of serve as an interface between both commercial industry and both the defense side. As we all know, defense has their own language. But we know on the commercial side it has its own language. So being able to kind of translate the problems and the processes of how to engage those 2 partners is really an important part of what we do. So we focus on facilitating those contacts. So on the defense engagement side, we focus on taking those curated problems and then working through our CSO process. We try to engage our commercial vendors and do it in a very streamlined way. And we'll go through that in a little more detail. So these are some of the impacts of the numbers. Numbers are always matter. So our focus here obviously is we're focused highly on accelerating acquisition. While we do rapid prototyping, our focus really is about transitioning capabilities. We're really proud of the number that we have close to almost a 50% transition rate. This is something that we spend a lot of time deliberating on where we want to go. So this is, there's the DARPAs of the world who do great things, but they focus on a lot of lower TRL technologies, or the ONRs of the world. Our focus is on much high TRL technologies, looking to actually accelerate something for a program of record, to actually assist them in actually fielding a capability in a very short order. And that it's somewhere in the 12 to 24 months. So now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jeremy, to kind of go through our CSO process, which actually is really important to understanding how you work with DIU and how we approach the problem set.
Good afternoon, everybody. Commander Jeremy Renard, member of the Defense Engagement Team.
Speak up a little bit.
Oh, can you guys hear me there? Oh, there we go. Yeah, so Commander Renard, first name Jeremy, Defense Engagement Team. I'll be going over the CSO process a little bit more, but first a quick background. CSO, specifically for DIU, was established in 2016 along with ACC New Jersey. Since that time, we've increased our contracting capability. We have ACC New Jersey, WHS, and also in-house contracting within DIU. It's important to note that CSO has a moniker throughout the defense acquisition world, and not all CSOs are created the same. Some are faster, some are slower. But DIU has really proved that our processes are able to move things along with respect to getting technology within. Wrong way. There we go. So I'm going to hang on this chart for just a little bit because it kind of goes and breaks down the entire CSO process. Upside down triangles. Everybody loves upside down triangles because by the time you get to the bottom of it, you have a resolution, as always, right? So at the top of the triangle, you'll see essentially we open up our solution. Prior to doing our opening our CSO and posting it out to the public, we review within DIU and with our partners the viability of technology supporting whatever the problem set that's been brought to us. So not every problem set that's brought to us may be supported by a technology or have mature technology available out in the commercial sector. But we go through that process and we make sure that that if we are starting the CSO process, we know that technology has been proven and is something that we can change and amend to DoD's needs. We take that. We put our CSO solution out on diu.mil. We don't use sam.gov, just to be clear. diu.mil posts the CSO. And there's about a 2-week window where vendors have to submit their solutions for that particular problem set. Currently, we have 3 on the website. You can go to diu.mil and take a look. And there are obviously within the 6 portfolios that have already been mentioned. We go through 3 phases once the CSO window closes. Those phases are 1, 2, and 3, pretty standard. Phase 1 is evaluation. So the barrier to entry for the CSO is 5 pages or 15 slides, pretty simple. We do that on purpose in order to break down the barriers for smaller companies to participate. When those solutions are submitted to us, we go through and make sure that the companies that are being submitted have the viability to do what they're proposing. There are some smaller companies, small startups with only a couple of employees, and there's larger ones that come through. But we go through the due diligence on every solution to see if that company or business is able to fulfill what they're proposing. Phase 1 is complete. We narrow it down. We invite the companies that move into Phase 2 to come and do a 1-hour pitch with the team. That pitch is both to us, DIU, and the partner service. So if it's a Navy project, then Navy's is sitting in the room. If it's an Air Force project, then the Air Force is sitting in the room, and so on. We can have multiple services in the room. So if there's a joint effort that's going on, we'll have multiple services in the room going through the pitches with us. Phase 3, we narrow that down to the contracting. We look for a 60 to 90-day contract phase from the time that we identify the solutions that are going to be contracted out. There's bottlenecks in every process, and sometimes that's not met. But that is our goal, is 90 days from the time that the CSO is finalized to the time that we actually have that company on contract. We will have, from time to time, we'll have more than one company, and we do that for several reasons. There might be 2 solutions that meet the bill, and we want to see which one performs better through the prototyping phase. The other thing is they could be complementary to each other. There could be cloud computing on one side, AI on another, blockchain on a different area, and all of those put together can come together to fit the problem set that it's being applied to. So as mentioned before, we have a defense engagement team, which myself and Glenn are a part of, and then we also have a commercial engagement team, which Ray, sitting in the crowd, is at the head of. The commercial engagement team is there specifically to map out and create those relationships with the ecosystems that we're working in. They both hold those networking capabilities and basically mapping out. There are SMEs on site that can tell us whether or not the technology base is actually mature enough to support what we're looking at. So from a commercial side, they reach out and they're our conduit to talking to both the venture capitalists, small companies, whoever's interested in doing business with the government through DIU. So DIU sometimes is thought of as a Silicon Valley specific entity, and that's not the case by any means. We have offices throughout the country, and the business that we do with small companies is also throughout the country. Our latest office it just opened up in Chicago this past year, and that is that talks to the fact that we are following where the tech is going. So as we see tech centers pop up around the country, DIU is at the very least, looking at those areas and making sure that we have some type of presence there. It may not be a full-on office, but we definitely have representation or people that are familiar with the area. The other thing about this slide that I want to point out is the number of and the breakdown of the vendors that we do business with. As you can see, there's quite a few that are first time and quite a few that are non-traditional. Non-traditional being that they haven't done business with the DoD in a while. So we're actually really looking for those solutions that are out in industry that may not be provided by your typical vendors. So I'm going to go through a couple slides on projects. I'm not going to go in depth on these, probably less than a minute per each. But the reason why we wanted to go through these slides is to kind of give you an idea of what DIU is working on. These are all of these different projects are at different points in their processes. But we bring it up just because we thought they were of interest to the audience here at FCF. So one of our largest Navy partners, PMS 408, has brought several projects to us, usually focused in the undersea warfare arena. The problem that was brought to here is essentially the EOD was looking for a way to detect and find mines and help them with their mission. So you may be familiar with the defenders that you see up there. They've been very successful, fielded, have done missions already. PMS 408 continues to be a great partner with us, and we've done several projects with them. Autonomy is obviously a big buzzword nowadays, especially within the Navy. So we have autonomy in the form of sail drone, and that just recently went into a transition. Blue UAS is essentially the management of the U.S. supply chain for small UAVs, UASs. We realized that DJI had cornered the market at one point, and now DIU set up the Blue UAS program for vetting of U.S. made UASs, which are now able to be purchased on GSA by operators with a government credit card. XView 3, this is a third iteration of our ability, or a prize challenge, excuse me. XView 3 was illegal fishing, unreported fishing, and we essentially put a prize challenge out and came up with the best solution for putting AI against imagery, commercial imagery for the identification of dark vessels. Installation counter UAS, obviously autonomy being a buzzword, obviously the red side has UAS capability, and this is one of the projects that went to transition through Anduril. Obviously the partners on the bottom right hand side shows the interest, and this is for detection and defense of bases. Tactical vehicle hybridization. This is essentially securing the supply chain. Oil, operational energy is a concern. Moving that resource around is a concern. So this helps mitigate that by using hybridization on a tactical vehicle. And then finally, this is kind of a common sense one, as electrical vehicles become more prolific around the bases, both on the government side and on the private side. This is an effort to maximize chargers on facilities that can be used by both the government and the personal uses. All right, so that's my time. I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Jesse Geip, and he'll follow up with some ensign.
All right, thank you. Can you all hear me all right? So Ensign, the National Security Innovation Network, is a part of the Defense Innovation Unit, and our mission is really designed to address a common trend that we've seen across the DoD over the last couple of decades, is that there are great, talented companies, individuals within university ecosystems who have skill sets and capabilities that the government wants access to. But unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, some of them are cultural, some of them are the nature of doing business with DoD, those communities are less connected to each other than they once were within our country. And you think back to how much R&D as a percentage of the U.S. R&D was paid for by the U.S. federal government not that long ago relative to where we are today, there's a big reason why these networks have become fairly disconnected. So universities with incredible talent, their students are not working on national security problems, they're moving into commercial sectors. And early stage companies oftentimes don't see the government as a customer, at least early on in their careers, in large part because we're difficult to do business with, they don't have good visibility into our problem sets, and they don't know how to work with us. And so Ensign was created as an entity that can help connect individuals with skill sets, capabilities, and technology with those who have the problems that they can potentially solve in more rapid fashion, with the goal of actually helping to bridge the gap between what has increasingly become a commercial sector and talent that do not cross over into the national security ecosystem. And so Ensign, when you think about us, or if you look at that sort of Venn diagram there on that center slide, we sort of sit in between these three communities. The DoD, who are the individuals that we're trying to solve problems on behalf of, across all of the services, very different levels of command that we'll work with, from senior leaders at the combatant commands at Indo-PACOM and across the world, but also down into individual soldiers, airmen, sailors, and Marines at military units who understand problems that they're facing day to day, but don't necessarily have the support either from a technical standpoint or financial standpoint to solve the problem that they're seeing. And these are things that we believe our organization is designed to help get after. And then lastly is that connection to academia is really trying to make sure that we pull in talent from these different academic centers of excellence across the country with people who might be interested in working on a national security problem within their academic career, but don't know how to do so. And so Ensign has developed programs to make that easier for them. And then also like DIU, we believe that, being in a specific geography matters. Not all great ideas live in the Beltway, and certainly not great all tech, not all great talent, and many of our operational forces also happen to not live in the Beltway. And so if we really want to solve operator problems with creative individuals from across the country, we also have to be where they are. So Ensign has really focused on building a distributed team that exists all across the country in major metropolitan areas in every state, pretty much in the United States, but also in smaller communities that are often overlooked, either because they have an important DoD installation in that particular community, or they have unique academic centers of excellence that are working on maybe overlooked problems like critical minerals. And there's some really interesting work being done in that area today. So just a bit by the numbers, and I'll go through this pretty quick because I think it's more important to get to the examples. But we track our metrics in terms of how we are impacting the DoD based on the number of individuals that we pull into our programs from academic centers of excellence. We also track the number of companies that come through our programs, how much funding they receive both from VC post coming through Ensign program, and then of course how much DoD funding those companies get as well over time. And since we're generally engaging with companies earlier than where DIU would typically engage, we have to track these metrics over years, since oftentimes we might be working with a concept company that's coming out of an academic institution that literally was formed maybe within the year in which we began working with them. And so we have to understand that their life cycle before they actually get to a place where their technology is deployable within a military context is going to take time. And Ensign wants to be a partner to those companies and those individuals as they work through that life cycle, going from initial stage concept through to a prototype. But one thing I'll say about that is I think in the DoD world, we use the concept of TRL levels very commonly. At Ensign, we don't like TRL levels, especially for software. I think it puts companies in boxes that doesn't actually really make sense, because you can have something go from a napkin concept in the software world to a fully deployable product in a matter of months with the right team and the right funding. But if we talk about things as if it's a TRL level 1, therefore it's going to take X amount of time, and based on our DoD standards, that's 8 years to get to TRL level 9, we're really shooting ourselves in the foot, not understanding that there are a lot of really impressive software capabilities that can be matured very rapidly. Integrating that into a DoD ecosystem is a whole nother challenge. But I think we need to be more open-minded about how we look at new and emerging capabilities, understanding the speed at which some of these commercial companies can move if properly incentivized with the right funding and access to the problem set. So as Ensign, we break down the way we help, we execute this mission of creating this national network into two kind of larger portfolios of programs, our talent portfolio and our venture portfolio. The talent portfolio, it includes everything that we do that focuses on our academic institutions. So we have things like what we're trying to build is sort of the Rhodes Scholarship of internship programs, where we hire about 250 interns every summer and then go and deploy those students directly with military units around the world. And these students are undergraduate, graduate, and PhD students, generally in the STEM fields, a lot of it in AI, ML these days, but also aerospace engineers, mechanical, EE, and they'll be given a specific project and they'll go work with a particular military unit to develop that concept, and then Ensign will work with that military unit to mature that technology past the point at which that internship team takes it. Now you may hear a program like that and say, well, that's not going to probably win the war in some future major conflict. But we really believe that the death by 1,000 cuts matter, and if we can start making a difference for warfighters where they are in these operational units, where they have pain points, helping them solve problems rapidly. One, it's a retention solution because there's a lot of really talented people in our military who leave because they're frustrated that they couldn't solve problems that they interfaced with day to day. But if we give them the capability to solve those things, maybe they'll stick around and be problem solvers for a longer period of time. But also those problems that we're solving are man hours, their efficiency gains, their optimization solutions that stack together over time really start to add up to a difference and impact for our warfighter and for our ability to operate in a conflict scenario. And then looking at our venture portfolio, so within the concept of this, we're looking at often doing things that help us find novel capabilities on behalf of a DoD mission partner. So I'll just give an example. We enjoy using pitch challenges. We think that they're not a perfect solution for all things, but they're certainly fairly optimal in the fact that they can be run very quickly. They allow us to conduct market research in a topic area that matters to a mission partner, and they allow us to engage with those companies who have presented themselves directly with the DoD mission partner to learn more about how their technology is useful or not for solving a given problem in a pretty rapid period of time. And so recently, as an example, we did a pitch challenge with NAVFAC XWIC and the Navy in response to the Red Hill incident out in Hawaii where we had fuel storage leaks. And so there are concerns within the DoD about how you inspect fuel tanks for leaks. This is both ground storage systems as well as ballast systems within ships themselves. And so Ensign ran a prize challenge funded in part by Office of Naval Research. About $700,000 we put up on the line. We had over 60 companies submit different concepts. Of those companies, only 5 that made it into the final pitch had ever done work for the Department of Defense before. One of the companies was one of the ones that ultimately ended up winning was an internal development project for Shell that was built for a custom challenge that Shell was dealing with, where they were trying to figure out how to use an autonomous solution to inspect an offshore oil rig off the coast of Australia that to them was the most complex thing that they've ever built in the ocean. And so they had spent millions of dollars of internal R&D funds to develop this company that's a Texas-based company. They have never demoed their product to anyone outside of Shell, and now they're bringing that solution to the government. Would that company have come to us as early in its development, which is basically out of stealth mode, were it not for this prize challenge? I could argue no, or certainly not on the same timeline. But now the Navy has access to a very robust capability that's been significantly de-risked by the investment of Shell, who still has value in the commercial applications of this company. And now we're going to be able to apply that technology to a real problem for the DoD and the warfighter. So I think it's a great example where working directly with the military, understanding a challenge, thinking about how we can provide that challenge out broadly to the network of phenomenal companies that we have across our country and give them an ability to apply their solutions in real time can drive change in a way that traditional RFPs running through a FAR-based acquisition process sometimes either overshoot because the level of sophistication required to compete in that world may not be where these companies exist, but also because of the speed of those things means that small stage companies oftentimes have to think about other ways to fund themselves. So I've already mentioned this, but this is just locations across the country where Ensign has a footprint, and this is actually a little bit of a dated slide, so we're in quite a few more places than where those stars indicate. And again, really coming back to the point of, we believe it matters to know the difference between what a map might say about who exists in a particular location and know the people who actually live and work in that place, whether that's military units, academics within the university, or early stage companies, VCs that exist in a given geography. And so for myself, as the PAC South Regional Director based here in San Diego, I cover Hawaii, California, and Arizona. And it's my responsibility to understand the problem sets from the missions, the operators across that community, understand, at least broadly speaking, the different VC networks that exist in that area, so that if we're running a challenge looking for certain capabilities, I can tap that network and ask them if they have things going on. But as it's my responsibility to sort of develop the PAC South ecosystem, I have colleagues of mine across the country who are doing similar things. So when we go out and try to find a capability on behalf of some DoD mission partner, it's not just me in the PAC South ecosystem, it's me plus all of our colleagues all across the nation who are tapping into local communities to say, do you have some company who you think might be a good solution for this given problem set? And that national network that we're building is really to help us expedite that market research and find things that realistically we would not be able to find individually otherwise. So that's a bit of an overview. I want to end just with one other project that we're really excited about to give another example of how we're working with the Navy today. And there are many other ones that I could give for how we're working with the Marine Corps and certainly the other services. But later this month, we're going to be announcing the 12 companies who've been selected to participate in our accelerator program called Propel Hawaii. But we've been working with PAC Fleets N6 to find new emerging capabilities to support a few different problem sets, looking at low-cost decoy ISR sensors for buoys, looking at distributed comms in denied environments, using a variety of different both hardware and software solutions. And through an accelerator program that we run in partnership with Decisive Point, we've went throughout and found 211 applicants to the program, down-selected through multiple stages to get to these top 12 companies who will be meeting over the next 3 months with PAC Fleets N6 and a variety of other DoD stakeholders, both for an evaluation back and forth between those technical SMEs from the Navy end users, but also to give these companies a chance to explain their capabilities, learn more about the DoD mission set, and then ultimately hopefully push them into some contract vehicles that we're supporting across the board. And so for those of you in the audience who are companies and you're wondering how to get involved with Ensign, please feel free to reach out to me. The best way to engage with us is around a particular problem that we're working. We work other parts of the military's problems. We're not trying to solve Ensign's problems. We're trying to solve the Navy's problems, Marine Corps, Air Force, Space Force, and Army, and Guard, and across the board. And we do work with the Coast Guard as well. And so if we're specifically soliciting a solution, that's the best way to get involved with us. But in the meantime, if you want to contact me or another one of my colleagues, we're constantly taking tech evaluations with individual companies so that we have sort of a Rolodex of potential capabilities that we can go out for when new problem sets arrive. And then just to end, I would say the advantage of working within the sort of DIU family of organizations, as you saw on that sort of slide with the 3 boxes of how we're kind of stacking our capabilities, the DIU family of organizations presents what really I think is going to be sort of the most holistic vision of how to rethink acquisition, starting from very early stage problem refinement, problem identification, and university engagement, all the way up through early stage company formation, early stage prototyping, production, all the way up to program of record. And so between Ensign, NSIC, and DIU, all three part of the DIU core DIU enterprise, we really have the ability across those 3 organizations to help a wide variety of DoD mission partners find and develop capabilities in ways that I think are new for the government. And we're constantly refining how to do that, but that's part of the unique advantage that our 3 organizations offer. And that's it for me.
Got that slide? All right. So kind of the third leg of our triumvirate here within DIU is the National Security Innovation Capital. So NSIC is our newest organization. I think it's less than about 2 years old, I believe, right about now. So recognition here that obviously, within DIU, we focus on obviously within DIU core, focus on problem curation to help accelerate the acquisition of a capability. Recognizing though that sometimes there's a lot of firms out there that don't actually have the solutions aren't quite there yet. They're still in development. We know that we're working in a lot of the emerging technology fields. A lot of the venture capital firms, they tend to focus a lot on software-centric solutions. So why is that? Because software is usually easy to fund early on, at least it doesn't require a lot of capital-intensive investment up front. We kind of recognize that we need to make some strategic bets, some strategic investments, and I use that word in a very, when I say investments, more non-dilutive funding in this regards. So NSIC was focused on primarily that, focusing on hardware investments and on very strategic focus areas to help really accelerate some of this dual-use technology that we anticipate we're going to need in the future. So just to give you a focus here on this. So these are the focus areas here. I'm not an expert in NSIC. I won't kind of speak beyond myself here. I'll speak what I know. But these are kind of our focus areas. But you can see right here that it kind of aligns very well with the core portfolios that we have within DIU. Obviously, this area is obviously a lot of growing sectors in this regards, but they are very capital intensive. So they do require some assistance sometimes. So this purpose of this is to make those strategic investments to help maybe scale those technologies, to get additional funding or get attractions, or to keep them to be able to pursue their research in a more in-depth manner that aligns well with the DoD's needs. And this is the last slide here before we kind of move into the Q&A here, focusing on the Venn diagram and the relationship between the two. And one thing we've noticed in the project side, there's obviously a lot of cross-pollination between these organizations and what they do. Very supportive in their areas, obviously from sensors to autonomous systems, you can make a clear case on what they do. So obviously there's a need to actually stay in there, but to be targeted in where we put the funding. So before we kind of go into the Q&A, this is our contact information. I just want to say this is a great opportunity for us to kind of give you a quick overview. We easily can spend definitely up to, each of us can probably spend about an hour talking about our respective organizations, but we want to be respective of your time here and really to kind of really give you opportunities to ask questions, because this is about understanding how we work, because we know the key to this is a partnership. We're big believers of communicating with industry itself and making sure you understand how we work and how we can work together, because we see the industry as key as to where the best ideas are going to come from, and being able to lower the barriers to entry to make it easier for you to engage with us is really going to be key to working together. So hopefully this provides a good opportunity, whether it be DIU or working with NSIN or potentially even with NSIC. This would be a great opportunity for us to collaborate going forward. So without further ado, I think we're going to turn it over to questions now for folks if they feel free to line up.
Great. Thank you. Can you just talk a little bit about how you're organized? I think you're reservists or active duty doing a couple of years there. What percentage military, what percentage civilian? Do people work for 20 years there, or do you rotate people in and out every couple of years back and forth between industry? Just something about the people that work
Sure.
there.
Well, we've only been around since about 2017, so definitely not 20 years for that matter. Good question. So within DIU core, they're a mixed bag of between active duty reservists, civilians, and contractors. It's definitely a mixed bag, but it's more focused on the subject matter experts. We do have some highly qualified experts that we bring in from industry. And their focus is on, depending on their skill set. So we tend to organize around, so for example, I am defense engagement. I'm an activated Marine reservist. So my focus is strictly on the Marine Corps equity. So I focus on Marine Corps every day. So I pretty much live down in Quantico. On every given day, I'm the one person who gets to wear a uniform every day, so within DIU. But we also have personnel like Jeremy, who's actually out in Mountain View. We have some of my colleagues here who are living in Hawaii. Also people scattered across the country working in different offices, whether it be Boston, Austin, et cetera. So it really kind of focuses on their expertise. We do like to bring in some contractors because we know that's where a lot of the expertise comes from. So we have that ability to kind of hire in that regards. So Jesse, I don't know if you want to talk about NSIN.
Yeah, sure. So NSIN was founded the same year in 2016. So no one has worked there for 20 years. 6 years is a very experienced NSIN employee. But most of our civilian leadership are either AFRL or ARL billets, but we also have OSD, R&E billets for our senior leaders. And then the rest of the force is contract workforce. So it's about 70% contract workforce, 30% civilians. That number's a little high on the civilian side, but we like to have people stick around. But to be fair, I think anyone who works in sort of the defense innovation ecosystem, people move around a lot, both between organizations, but also there's lots of exciting opportunities for people both in and out of government, and so there's a lot of flux. And I think that that's actually pretty healthy, that we don't have too much stagnation happening within organizations like ours that are supposed to be thinking creatively about how to solve problems.
Yeah, I guess, what would you say would be kind of the big differentiator between DIU and the innovation centers? There's the BCTOE, there's the HiPix, there's hundreds of them out there where every organization seems to have their own innovation center that within the last years all seems to be getting rolled into Army Futures Command in regards to what their capabilities or requirements are with their various TRL levels. And is DIU more of an InQtel without the tier, with the venture VCs as a defense backed, whereas the innovation centers are, looking for TRL levels with the commander's intent requirements?
No, it's a great question. So we're not an InQtel. We're not making equity investments into organizations. Kind of go back to what I was saying in terms of our relation. We're kind of a facilitator, a broker, a go-between two organizations. So our job really is to just really do, the jokingly we say we're kind of party planners. We bring matchmakers and bring people together in this regard. So for our job here is to really focus on commercial dual-use technology. So if you remember anything, right, commercial dual-use technology that was primarily built out for the commercial sector, and our job is really to just modify it slightly to really get after a need. Another differentiator is our streamlined approach. We exclusively use OTA, other transaction authority, if you're familiar with it. But we marry it up with our CSO process. Most people, if they're not familiar with the OTA, they think it's kind of the Wild West. They're unfamiliar with it, as compared to most FAR-based acquisition. The OTA, when paired with the CSO, gives us that competitive edge to be able to move with a very streamlined process. So we're able to, with not using the FAR-based acquisition, we don't require 70 pages in the requirements. We don't do RFIs. When we put out a solicitation on the website, that is our call to action to say, hey, industry, we have baked this problem enough. We know we have a plan here for actually do a prototype rapidly, and we have a strong potential to try to transition this. So again, we foot stomp on this because transition. We're hyper focused on transition because we're not a rapid or prototyping just to prototype for the sake of exploring the technology. Industry has already proven this out. We know this technology works. Our goal is to get this technology into the hands of warfighters as fast as possibly we can with slight modifications using a very streamlined process. So I hope that answers some of your questions.
Thank you. Just a quick question about matchmaking, if you will. So, a lot of times some of the problems that you've posted, the technology needed doesn't exist just in one small business. It could be multiple. I was wondering if you've had experience with that where you've match-made a couple different small companies or entities, and what was your strategy doing that way?
Yeah, so matchmaking. So oftentimes, especially on larger projects, larger concepts, the problem set will be so large that no one particular company will be able to solve the problem. So we've had instances in the past where we will actually have several companies overseen by another one, so essentially subcontractors working together towards a single site. We have a project ongoing currently called Hybrid Space Architecture. Obviously, that is a huge concept, right? Creating the Internet of Outer Space is not a simple thing to do. So we have, eight companies on contract and 20 total with, about 12 in our portal ready to kind of jump on when it reaches maturity. And I think that kind of sets a good example for the fact that we have competitors actually sitting at the same table trying to figure out how the IP will work between these different platforms. So from a matchmaking point of view, if the interest from the DoD is there and the project is big enough, we can bring those people together to the table. And likewise, we can also compete them against each other, right? So two solutions, they may not be, a perfect match for each other, but one has, a widget that's just a little bit different than the other widget. We can bring both of those to the partner, to the service, and say, which one did you like better? They both solved the problem, but which one was more user-friendly, or which one had reduced latency, whatever the case is. And then the partner, the service, can come back to us and say, hey, we like A, not B because of this. So, yeah, that matchmaking is an important piece, being a joint organization. Yeah.
And then just to add from an Ensign, so we, for the venture portfolio, like if we're running a prize challenge, usually in the selection phasing, we try to leave time for the finalists to interact with each other, because sometimes there's sort of some teaming that should take place amongst some of those, and we leave time for people to think about how to do that. And then depending on the problem set that we might be working on, since generally speaking, Ensign isn't looking at developing complete platforms from scratch, it's usually more a sensor package or a data suite, something that could be stacked with other capabilities. When we engage with that original mission partner about, what is the problem we're trying to solve, what is the existing capability that this might be integrated with, we start trying to line up either that, prime or whatever the other underlying technology is going to be for the integration into the process early enough that we're facilitating at least a warm handoff for someone to become a sub or to engage with the right PEO who's managing the execution of that integration for the future steps. But depending on how early we are in the process, we acknowledge that that's absolutely a key part of doing this effectively, is knowing that one company may not have that complete capability, and trying to help you think through like who you can partner with is an important part of the process. But we try to bake that into, it gets tricky to encourage teaming depending on where you are in that process. But we like to at least build into our timelines enough ability for you to think about how you might be able to team with some of the other competitive companies who are going through a selection and then come up with a better outcome.
Richard King from Zero Avia. We're in the hydrogen fuel cell business. Could you expand on the challenges and projects you've got going on with energy, operational energy for the Department of Defense? And the second question is, how true is it that a small business already needs to have organized both the sponsor and customer within the Department of Defense before they come to DIU? Because most small businesses don't have that kind of expertise within their portfolio to understand how DoD works. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's a great question. I'll start with number 2 because I think that's a little easier specifically. It's not as focused on the energy side, but that's kind of what DIU is focused on. Like, really, how do we make it easier for the non-traditional firms that never would have thought to work with DoD to kind of like, why would they want to work with us? They always traditional FAR-based acquisition and, a 70, 100-page RFI page come out to answer something. What does that mean to me? I'm not going to spend, in the next, 12 hours of my time trying to fill out this paperwork to do this. So through the CSO process, we when that was designed, it was thinking about, what's the burden you're going to put on the small business? And we don't ask much up front. The request is really just as simple as this: a 5-page white paper or a 15-page PowerPoint. Make it real simple for you to engage with us, to kind of lower those barriers to entry to make you want to talk to us. And we do that through a series of process, and we do that through a series of engagements from the arm. So when we put something on the website, that's all we're asking for, the initial ask. As we move down through the down select process, and we actually go through this phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, we'll then go to phase 2. We'll do kind of like a Shark Tank style. So again, not a heavy ask, but hey, you say you can do something. We're interested enough to where we want to hear about your product. Okay, great. Come to us. Meet our experts. Meet our subject matter experts. DIUs, our stakeholders, our partners in this regard. So it would be the Marine Corps, or the Navy, or whomever it would be. And we all sit in a room and we talk through this. Okay, what can you say you do? So it's a very iterative discussion. It's a very engaging discussion to understand what your process is. Again, not a heavy ask up front. If you make past phase 2 and there's interest there for the government wants to move forward, we move into the RPP portion of this. So before we actually exchange any money, before we actually seek any real proprietary data, and by the way, we all sign NDAs prior to this, So we respect, your research. We go through this very detailed process to give you an opportunity to really talk to us. I think we recognize that there has to be a relationship with the vendors themselves, and to be able to give them a voice and a platform to really speak to the solution to meet our needs in that regard. So we think we're different. We're not FAR based. We don't have this the great wall between us and the vendors where we're just the government, and then this is what we're going to do. We're going to move on our own timeline. We're respective that you move, for a lot of VC-backed firms, they're moving at 12, 18-month cycles, and they've got to produce revenue on their side. So they have to do, and they have to move, and we want to be conscious of that. So that's really what a lot of the things we do is really minimize the process, minimize the bureaucracy, focusing on engaging with you to understand what your problem is. And if it doesn't work out, then we can just cut bait early, and then we can move on and try again. This way, we're not sucking up your bandwidth, so you can focus on what you're supposed to be doing. So. Can anyone want to talk about the XView prizes, the prizes themselves? I don't think we have any prize challenges on energy right now, do we?
No, I'll touch base on the operational energy piece. I'm not going to focus on hydrogen because I don't want to go beyond my depths when it comes to that information. But I will talk about our portfolio writ large. The operational energy portfolio is our newest portfolio, and from the time that it was started to current day, essentially our project load has just completely 100x'd, to the point where project managers are taking on one or two projects. We do have tight relations with the OECIF community. We actively participate in their selections and their fundings, and then through the other DoD entities that are overseeing the operational energy needs that are emerging. So from that point of view, operational energy is definitely is an important piece to kind of DIU's growth. Yeah. So.
Any other questions? Got about 5 minutes left, so.
I was going to say, just going back to the question that you had, it was a good question about how is our enterprise different than many different innovation soup of organizations that exist in DoD today. One, I would say that the fact that there are so many is sort of a broad acknowledgement within the department that we want to do things differently. So while it, in some cases, is sort of like counterproductive and confusing as hell as someone on the outside to know why you should or should not engage with any one of those given organizations, one of the advantages of being an OSD R&E organization, which DIU and NSID and NSIC are, is that we're not service specific. Several of the efforts that you listed, the PED Center, those are Army specific initiatives, and while they're great at maybe supporting a particular community, they have maybe limited visibility about horizontally about what other service specific efforts might be underway. And since our organizations are horizontal in our view, we're not necessarily expecting to go a mile deep into a specific Navy problem as often as we would expect that Navy counterpart to do so, but we may have better visibility into what the Air Force is doing that's directly related to that problem and can connect the dots between those things more rapidly than other organizations can. And that ability to have sort of that horizontal view across the services allows us to pull in problem sets in a way that I think the service-specific efforts are not necessarily designed to do. But we see all of those things as complementary, right? If from an ensign perspective, any tool that we use from a programmatic standpoint, whether it's prize challenges or the accelerators that we run or the university engagement, those are ends to a mean, or a way for us to achieve a specific end game. But in the future, if we said, every service is now running phenomenal programs in all these areas, that those programs are now redundant to those activities and no longer necessary, we would cut them. And if there's a future end state in which ensign is like, the broader commercial network and the universities have figured out how to work more rapidly in real time with warfighters across the DoD in a way that I would maybe say used to exist in our country 40 or 50 years ago, maybe ensign doesn't need to exist. I think we got a ways to go to prove that that's the new world that we live in, but that's ensign's mission, is to reconnect communities that have become fairly disconnected over the last 30 years and to do so as quickly as possible.
Any other questions? Got about 4 minutes left.
I'll ask the question. So an organization wins a program with DIU. They get that first one up and running. Does DIU assist in bringing that to other organizations? Because I know that first process is going to be pretty slick, but if you have to go through the FAR process on the second one, that's avoidable if you can.
No, great question. So yes, short answer, yes, we definitely want to help that company or that solution scale. As Jesse said, we're a joint organization. We don't just support one service. We find this actually quite a bit. As you can imagine, one service's problem is another service's problem, or at least another government agency's problem. So by all means, we want to actually scale that technology and solution. And that's kind of the beauty of OTA. If you work in that acquisition field, if you have a competitive solution up front, a competitive process up front, and you have a successful solution on the back end, you actually can scale that. Anyone in the U.S. government can take that success memo from that competition and then write a production OTA about it. So that's actually one of the things we do a lot of. Actually, I spend quite a bit of time of like, hey, if the Navy is already has done an action, a CSO, and they have a successful solution, hey, U.S. Marine Corps, why are you repeating yourself? They've already spent their money. I know the Marine Corps, we're cheap. We don't have a lot of money. So we're all about using other people's money, and I should say, government money, I should say, to be able to scale that technology across for the DoD. So we spend a lot of time actually in doing that. So it's a great question. The other option that we have is what we call the portal. So if you have a successful solution that comes out of a CSO, you make it through phase 3, and we've determined that maybe company 1 is the vital one for the Navy because it's their project, that's what they're doing. However, so maybe the Marine Corps or the Army or the Air Force or maybe some other government agency says, hey, I really like what you're doing, but I don't want to focus on company 1, I want to focus on company 2. Well, great, because we have put maybe a series of maybe 1 to 5 companies in our portal that anyone in the government then can pull out of our portal and then access for their own prototype. So we make it really easy for them to kind of leverage our technology, not just for our specific partner, because we want that to scale across the DoD or across the U.S. government in that regards. So, great question. So
I would say there's probably, at the end of every DoD rainbow, there's still probably a FAR contract, right? So, there's a lot that DIU has been able to accomplish with the OTs that can get people really far, and with prototype and production OTs, there's a lot that can be accomplished there, and I think DIU has been one of the leading organizations in the department at exploring that. But part of this is trying to think about that's all the valley of death conversation about eventually there are requirements that you're going to have to reach potentially, maybe, and depending on what your vision is for how you need to service the government, and there may not be a workaround for that at some end state, but we'd rather have you making money, working with the DoD, having us learn about your capability, you learn about our needs as you work your way through those processes, than having to just hope that you'll get to a FAR-based contract and go through no funding to hopefully winning a large contract. These models sort of de-risk that, and both for the government, because we get to see the capability and mature it alongside you, but hopefully also for companies, because you get to have funding along that pathway.
Great question. Got about a minute or 2 left.
No, I was going to ask, are there any additional questions? Okay, gentlemen, I'd just like to, on behalf of AFCEA and USNI, thank you very much for your time today. Thanks for what you do. It's critically important to meet the challenges of today and tomorrow. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Great. Thank you.